chairperson for Africa Water Ambassadors. We have 𝗪𝗓 from 𝗧𝗓 County, and we have Ali, an engineer from Tana and Athi Rivers Development Agency. Authority. Yes, thank you so much for joining. This is a joint collaboration between Kenya Youth Parliament for Water and the Africa Water Ambassadors. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm 𝗪𝗓 𝗂𝒂𝒕𝒆𝒓. I'm the president of KYPW. You're most welcome. Beatrice.
Thank you, 𝗪𝗓, for that brief introduction. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening from wherever you're getting this from. And I hope you're having an amazing day at the start of the week. My name is Beatrice 𝗪𝗏. I work with Africa Water Ambassadors as the youth coordinator, or as the coordinator of the organization. And our is a youth-led organization that focuses on promoting integrated water resource management, and also in nexus with climate resilience, and as well as inclusion of youth participation within the water governance, and of course, look at youth youth-led initiatives and of course activities across Kenya. It was initially founded in 2023 as Kenya Water Ambassadors, and but along the way we later rebranded to Africa Water Ambassadors to be able to expand our continental reach within Africa. And our basically amplify youth voices within the water sector by creating a spaces where young people can be able to engage on matters to do with policy discussions and community engagement on water resource management. And specifically today, we've been honored to be able to work together with Kenya Youth Water Parliament for this specific webinar to be able to unpack on the role of youths within the Kenya Water Compact 2026, which was recently released last month. And we'll be able to get more about what this specific compact entails. And before I continue, I want to give it back to my co-host, who will be giving us a brief intro of what this webinar specifically entails in terms of the overview, the objectives, and as well as what exactly are expected of us as we also continue to be able to take part in water conservation and of course conversations around youth and water within the sector. So I want to give this chance to my co-host to be able to take it over, and I wish you all a very amazing discussion. And yeah, I'll be able to also talk more about it later on, but yeah. Thank you so much, and I look forward to this amazing conversation. Over to you, 𝗪𝗓.
Thank you. So the unpacking the role of youth in Kenya Water Compact 2026-2023. And this came about from the Water Forward, which is an event that happened last month on 15th of April. Danielle will speak more on that. And the Kenya Water Compact is one of the, first of all, one of the countries that committed to Water Compact, but then it's one of the levers in the Water Forward initiative. So basically the objectives are to familiarize ourselves with what it is and to understand what the objectives, what the opportunities are for the youth in Kenya. So I would like to start by introducing Brian from AWA to share a short keynote with us, and then you can proceed. Welcome, Brian.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, 𝗪𝗓. And also, thank you so much, Beatrice, for putting these up together and for convening us together here as young people to just unpack the Water Compact 2026-2030, and to just have a conversation as young people on what are some of the areas that we can contribute to this very crucial document. So it's an honor to join you for this very important webinar. And to begin, the Kenya Water Compact presents, I think, very vast opportunities for the young people. I'll try to be very brief because I also know the interest of time. Um, I'll say that this is more than a policy framework. It is a national commitment that transforms how Kenya manages, how Kenya governs, and how Kenya invests in the water and sanitation. I think for the next 5 years, because it runs from 2026 to 2030. So I think the core of this compact is to strengthen water governance and expand equitable access and build climate resilience and mobilize investments to ensure that water remains a foundation for health, agriculture, economic growth, and environmental sustainability. As Africa Water Ambassadors, I think these are some of the core areas that we stand for, that things that we try to advocate for as young people, that we have a decision, we have say when it comes to water governance, when it comes to how water is allocated. And so through this compact now, it gives the young people to consolidate all these voices and ensure that it is time that they are put into policies and they can be implemented, and actually there are impacts and results across. So this vision is strongly anchored in existing national frameworks, I know, such as the Water Act, which always emphasize that young people should, or the Act of Public Participation through the RUAs, that young people should join the RUAs, that young people should lead these RUAs, which is provided for in the Water Act of 2026 as an public participation framework, and aligns with Kenya's broader development agenda and the government continued focus on youth empowerment and economic inclusion. Everyone right now in the country is grappling on how to include young people in all the areas of government of governance, be it economic governance, be it at the policy level. We even seen how currently at the country level we have integrated young person as the CS of water. And I think this just showed the power of young people in trying to push policies that are pro young people. And so we have seen young people mobilizing through digital means. We have seen young people mobilize physically. We have seen young people in communities doing sensitization, breaking down policies like the finance bills into languages, different languages that young people can easily understand. And I think this is the direction that young people should going forward. And so beyond participation, young people must also step into strategic leadership in integrated water resource management and also issues to do with WASH. I know we have representatives from the parliament here today, and they'll be unpacking issues to do with WASH. And this is the direction that young people should take in trying to advance all these policies and all these implementation in the water sector. So I want to stop there. In conclusion, I just want to say that the Kenya Water Compact 2026 provides us with a defining opportunity for a generation of young people to shape the future of water security in Kenya. So thank you so much. My name is 𝗵𝗲 𝗪cie, the current chairperson of Africa Water Ambassador, and it is an honor to join in and listen to this very important conversation going forward. Back to you, Njeri, and I thank you for the few minutes to open this conversation.
Certainly. Thank you so much, Brian. Now I invite Judith, the Vice President of Kenya Youth Parliament, to say a little bit about who we are. Yes, Judith.
Yeah, hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning to everyone. I am Judith Mwangi. I am the KYPW Vice President. Just to introduce KYPW, it's a youth-led non-profit organization which was founded in 2022 to empower Kenyan youth as change makers in the water sector. We have 3 founding members, but our main founding member is 𝗵𝗲. So she's retired, but she's a very active member of the chapter still. We are an official Kenyan chapter of the African Youth Parliament for Water and of the World Youth Parliament for Water, which is the mother chapter. The African Youth Parliament for Water, whose the vice president is here, Danielle. Hi, we have been able to have 24 chapters. And Kenya is among them. I think that's all I can say for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We can dive into the first section of the webinar, which will be led by Danielle. As I share the screen, let me read her bio. So Danielle was born and raised in Cameroon. She is a progressive professional in project management in the international development sector, a young leader for the SDGs, and advocate for youth empowerment, youth inclusion in the SDGs and governance, making waves of change for youth inclusive global development. As a fierce champion for youth inclusion in creation of a sustainable world, she has a dedication on expanding access to youth engagement, on clean water and sanitation for all, gender equality, education, amongst others. She believes that young people, independently of their backgrounds, are agents of change and innovation leaders, connecting local communities and ready to take the necessary risks for their communities in a rapidly changing world. She holds a master's degree in humanitarian action and international development from a university, Laval, and is an ACT Alliance Academy Fellow on Advocacy on Climate and Gender Justice. Let me quickly share my screen. Yes, Danielle, kindly take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a black thing on the screen. I don't know if it's only from my end. I can't see the screen fully. And now it's all black. Is it only me?
Okay, let me try to share. Just a second. Is that better?
I personally cannot see the screen. Maybe it's just me.
No, the screen is now it's visible.
Okay, now it's good. Okay. Okay, thank you, Jerry. Yes, I think we can go to the next slide, maybe. Can you hear me well?
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. Currently joining from Lomé, Togo. Thank you, first of all, so much for having me, to all the Kenyan Youth Parliament for Water team. Yeah, it's really good to be here today, and I want to start by saying how excited I am and how proud I am of what we are doing all together, especially with the Kenyan Youth Parliament for Water, what we are building, because this webinar is exactly what Water Forward asked for. Not just like a launch event at the World Bank, but also a movement, right, that continues beyond Washington, beyond the event. So a movement that continues in communities, in chapter meetings, in conversations like this one. So I'm very grateful to be in this room where we are actually making it happen. So thank you for that. And yeah, I think we can start with the presentation. the Water Forward initiative. So some people might be wondering, why are we talking about like water now, like especially water forward? So I think it's very important to also understand the global water crisis, which is the leading reason why we even have this platform. So uh, before we even reach the stage where we talk about water forward, I think it's very important to understand why this initiative actually exists. So you see some numbers on the screens, right? So those numbers are not abstract at all. Those numbers represent people, they represent communities, they represent young people across the African continent and even beyond. So here we see, for example, that we have 4 billion people that experience water scarcity. Ourselves, we might experience water scarcity, or we might know of people that are going through that. So when I was preparing my presentation during the Water Forward initiative, it came to my attention that nearly half of the global population cannot rely on water being available when they need it. So not because water does not exist, not at all, but because the systems to manage and to distribute water have not been built or even maintained. So this is like, we are talking about like a governance failure. It's not that people don't have water. It also goes back to like a story that I shared during the events. Like me, one of the reasons why I started working in water sanitation, not even working, but one of the reasons why I started being interested and being involved is because I remember the cholera epidemic back in the 2010s. I think it was in 2015, I don't remember. And the reason why that cholera epidemic was so bad was not because people didn't had access to water, but because they did not, like, water was there, right? But it was not safe, it was not clean. So it's very important to make that difference that, um, the population, like, we have water, but the water is not safe. So it's not a question of whether water exists. It's a question of whether we have safe water, we have the systems, we have the governments that understand that we need to build a mechanism um, to have access to that water. And now we also have like 2.1 billion of people that like access to safe drinking water. That goes back to my previous point. So one research actually said that 1 in 4 people cannot access water that is safe to drink. And of course, we know that this is not abstract. This is real. This is like real people's life, especially in peri-urban and remote areas where we don't have the infrastructures. So it's very important to keep that in mind. We have another number here that says that 3.5 billion people like safely manage sanitation. So inadequate sanitation is the reason why girls actually miss schools, if we want to talk about like those who are the most exposed, to the consequences of poor sanitation. We have, for example, young girls that miss school because of hygiene, the periods and stuff like that. We also have women that work hours to go fetch water, for example. And while doing that, they also face safety risk every day. And it's also one of the reasons why disease spreads through communities. I was talking about the cholera epidemic earlier that was spread rapidly because of poor sanitation, for example. So sanitation here is dignity. And we can see here that 3.4 billion people actually lack that dignity, unfortunately. And the last point, oh, I'm so sorry, Jerry. I wasn't done. I was just drinking water really quick. The last point here is 1.7 billion jobs actually depend on water globally. So I see that on this call, we have a lot of like engineer, even within the work that we do within our networks, we have a lot of like engineers. So we know that water is not only a water issues, it also affects like jobs, policies, stuff like that. And the number like this number actually was very important during the conversations that we had at the World Bank because we had representatives from different industries like agriculture, energy, services, government. So every single sector that actually creates job touches water at the same point, right? So they recognize that when water systems failed, economies as well are more likely to fail. So when the water system doesn't work, opportunity doesn't expand, unfortunately. And this takes me back to a conversation that we had during the event with Aliko Dangote, who is the chairman of the Dangote Group. And they they were talking about how important, like water is, especially in the industry sector, to develop jobs, to have more jobs and opportunities for other people, and also to develop the potential, to unlock the potential of our continent when we talk about, especially on the economic level. So it's also very important to keep that in mind. Water security definitely drives jobs and also drives the economic and the future of our continent. So these four numbers like actually tell one story. Like the global water crisis is not like a future risk. It's something that is already here. It's already present today. And it's why we have this initiative. This is the reason why we are talking about Water Forward. So on this next slide, we are trying to understand like what is Water Forward and why is it different? So if you are in this field, you have experience working in the, this fair, going to these rooms, you might have seen other different initiatives like the Water Forward. So this is not the first thing that you might have heard of. But I believe that Water Forward is not another random or another aid program. So this is the first global initiative that treats water security as an economic infrastructure priority. And this is the first time that water is treated at that level, actually, like treated as an economic, infrastructure. And it's also backed by very important multilateral development bank with governance and drivers of these sectors. So here are some key factors to keep in mind. The Water Forward was launched on April 15 during the World Bank Spring meetings. And the goal here was to reach more than the goal here is to reach more than 1 billion people by 2030 with safe water. And 14 countries have signed and has signed the Water Compact and have made different promises around that. And amongst these countries were Kenya, actually, 400 billion annual gap in water investment. It's a big number to keep in mind. So Water Forward actually exists to close that gap. And here's a very good quote from the World Bank President, AJ Benga. He said that water is foundational to how economies function. When water systems work, farmers produce, businesses operate, and cities attract investment. So we see that in the past years, water has always been like a humanitarian topic, right? Development topic, but nobody never looked at it on the economic side. So we see a big shift here from humanitarian to economic. And this is why the African Youth Movement for Water, we've been, working with the different chapter, we've been working on that as well because we recognize that water, like I mentioned earlier, it's not only humanitarian, it's not only a policy issue, it's something that affects different side, like jobs, economy, opportunities. So it's very important to see that, yes, it's actually recognized that way. And Water Forward is the institutional architecture that has finally been placed to catch up on that and also to work with different community because the community on the ground, like they know, they already knew like this side, right? This perspective, like the economic side of it, the humanitarian side, but also the economic side, and why it is important to also look at water as a driver for a safe future. So it's good that we have that launch finally. So on this next slide, we have the three different pillars to build a water secure world. So let's start with water for people. Those are the pillars that were included in the Water Forward initiative as well. So we know that 1 billion people lack safe drinking water. We've talked about this earlier. So this specific pillar actually focuses on universal access, safely managed sanitation, financially sustainable utilities, and accountability frameworks. For us, young African from the continent, what does this represent? Like, what does water for people represent? I like to think about, the youth. I will say, like, for example, this is like for a young girl who cannot stay in school without safe sanitation. And when we talk about water for people, we talk about like those people, like the community whose health, for example, outcomes are actually determined by whether the tap water works or no. So this is how like I understand this pillar, water for people. And the second one is water for food. And agriculture actually uses 70% of fresh water globally. This pillar focuses on climate resilient irrigation, water efficient farming, and modernized infrastructure. So if we take the case of Kenya in particular, we know that I think that Kenya is very well advanced when it comes to agriculture, if I'm not mistaken. And irrigation compacts are essential to food security and youth agricultural livelihoods. So we see the correlation between water and food here, and it's very important to have that in mind as well. Now, if we want to talk about water for the planet, by 2030, which is the deadline to reach the goal to build a sustainable planet, freshwater demand will exceed supply by more than 40%. So this pillar covers nature-based solutions, flood and drought resilience, watershed protection, and climate adaptation. So this pillar is the pillar that connects water directly to the climate crisis. Young people are already living and are already demanding action for. So I was very happy to see like those three pillars coming together and being connected for this specific initiative. So they are not separated. In every community, whether it is in Kenya or in other countries from across the continent, you know, people that lack sanitation, for example, farmer without reliable irrigation, or even the community flooded by climate extremes, those people are the same family, the same household, and they are affected the same by those different issues and those different pillars. So they are never separated. Next slide, please. Thank you. And we've talked about the economic side of the water forward earlier and how this was the first time that water was also seen from that perspective. And you see here some very good numbers about that. So like for example, we see here that every $1 invested in water returns $4 in economic value. So water actually is good. Safe water is good to boost like the economy of like specific country. 1.7 billion jobs worldwide depend on water systems. We have 260 billion lost annually from inadequate water and sanitation. And like we mentioned earlier, freshwater demand will exceed supply by more than 40% by 2030. So what does it mean for young people, for example? when young people from I'm currently in Togo, so let me take the example of Togo. So when like a young person from Togo cannot keep like a business running because the water supply keeps running out or is unreliable, you see that this is not only a water problem. This is not only like a tap problem. This is like an economic exclusion problem, right? Because you cannot keep like the business open because of the source of the supply. That is not good. So I remember a couple years ago, I think it was in 2023, we had a Pad a Girl campaign in Zambia where we're working with young girls in Zambia that were not going to school because of bad sanitation. And it actually makes me think like when a young girl, for example, in Zambia, in that community, works hours for water instead of going to school, or even she works hours to go collect water and arrive at school too tired to learn. This is obviously not a sanitation problem. This is like an education equity problem that will have impact on the economy on the long term. So all this to go back to the fact that water forward, if done well, will be the best thing to make economic argument to build to strengthen. I think yeah, strengthen is the best word here. So water forward, if done correctly, will be the the stronger tool actually to push forward what young people have always been asking for and advocating for. So we move from water as humanitarian policy to something that's also like economic and that's also important to unlock the finance future of the continent and even beyond that. Now let's talk about how Water Forward works. Sorry, I'll just take a sip of water really quick. So how does waterfall works? So here we have 4 levels. You can see on the screen. The first one is the country-led water compact. So during the event, there were 14 countries that came on the stage and that made different promises, different compacts for their countries. So those governments defined their own reform priorities when it comes to water sanitation, and they have committed to institution building and set investment pathways as well to reach those commitments. One compact alone mobilized $7.6 billion. So Kenya, like I mentioned earlier, is one of the first 14 countries that actually came with a water compact. And also Kenya has a dual wash and irrigation compact targeting universal water and sanitation access and doubling climate resilient irrigated area by 2030. So Kenya is very much involved in that process already. And besides wash only, the country has another irrigation compact. So that's why we are talking about a dual, like two different, like two things together, wash and irrigation. The second level, after we have the compact and all the commitment, now it's time to mobilize the capital. It's time to mobilize the fund for that. So here we talk about the blended finance, the guarantees, the banks. We also had different banks that came on the stage and make commitments. So I will say that Water Forward is the largest coordinated water financing coalition ever assembled because we had the banks, we have the governments, like all those different stakeholders, the private sectors coming all together to make financial commitment to reach this goal. So after we have the capital mobilization, now we go to the strengthening of institution. Here we talk about utility reform. Of course, we need to have good policy and good regulation. We need to have good water management systems, capacity building, financial sustainability. So infrastructure without institutions is not going to work. like if you have good infrastructure, if you build really good things, but we don't have the institutions to sustain it, it's not going to work. So this is a reminder that it is important to invest in both. So both in the infrastructure and also in the institution to make it sustainable. And the last level is the global and country platform. So this is where the the country, just give me a second. Okay, sorry about that. So the global and country platform is actually where, like the chapters and even the countries, the local governments, they all come together, right, on the platform to amplify, like in our cases, to amplify youth voices in national water governance. And also we connect grassroots communities to the national platform and also to the global water forward implementation. So here is what we mean by global and country platform. So country platforms are actually designed to integrate youth, civil society, and other stakeholders like the private sector. And this is not meant to be like a tokenistic process or a symbolic process, but more structural and more real. So this is it for the level 4. And with those 4 steps, we understand how it works because it can be a little bit abstract just saying like that. But yeah, those are the different steps how we implement the water forward. And this is a nice presentation about the country-led water compact. So like I mentioned earlier, we had a representative from Kenya, also Senegal, that has a national compact, expanding safe water coverage and reforming the utility sector with blended finance. From Kenya, we have the dual wash and irrigation compact, and this universal water and sanitation access and doubling irrigated area by 2030 is what Kenya is leading on. We also had Sierra Leone, Angola that came with different commitments. So you can see that these are not, it's a lot of number, but these are not like statistics, right? These are countries where we have young leaders, where we have relationships, and where we have the networks already doing the work on the field. And we can see that through the Water Compact, the Water Forward initiative is committing institutional resources to help those people already doing the work on the field. So the question here is not whether the initiative is relevant to our work, to what we do. The question is how, as youth voices, as youth representatives, we can position, ourselves in our communities to be delivery and efficient partner that makes these compacts real at the community level. So how do we actually position ourselves to hold our governments accountable for these compacts? So this is the main question, and this is the thing that we must be thinking of as well. So how do we mobilize capital for the Water Compact? Earlier in the presentation, we've mentioned that there is a 400 billion gap in the water investment that cannot be closed by governments and aid alone. That's not possible. Government and aid are not enough. So Water Forward actually uses financial tools to bring private capital into the sector and to help with that. So you see something here about the blended finance. This is like a very important government to multilateral bank. The blended finance is actually used to absorb the first layer of risk. I'm not really good at finance, but from a general understanding, This blended finance is actually used to, absorb the different risk, and it makes the investment viable for private capital that will otherwise stay away. So with this, we are able to attract more people from the private sector to invest in this. And we are basically using public funds to de-risk the market so private money can flow in at scale. So that's what the blended finance means. And we have other things like guarantee and de-risking. We have the philanthropic capital. And during the launching, we had several multilateral partners that committed to the initiative, including the World Bank Group itself, the African Development Bank, the Asian Development Bank. We had the European Investment Bank, Inter-American Development Bank, and so on and so on. So here we are talking about major multilateral development bank from across the continent, from across the world, the planet, that are all aligned behind one water strategy. And this is something that has never happened before. So the financing architecture of the initiative is built on one insight. Water investment is not charity. We are not seeing it as charity. We are seeing it as a very strategic thing. It is an infrastructure with returns, right? When you invest in it, you will have return later on. So when you structure it correctly, private capital will follows, and you will have like good return on the longer term. Next slide, please. Next slide, Jerry. Sorry. Okay. So earlier we spoke about how infrastructure without good institution are not reliable and can fail. So we can build, like someone in their community can build a water treatment plant or something to treat water. But if the utility running it cannot manage like the finances, enforce the regulations, or attract investment, it's not really worth it. So that's why it is important to pair both the infrastructure, which is the idea, which is the building, with the mechanism behind it. So here we are talking about strengthening institution through investment in both hardware and also in the institutional software simultaneously, so that we can have both working together. So something that stood up with me is that most African water utilities are not, unfortunately, sometimes they are not credit worthy. So meaning that they cannot borrow commercially to finance expansion or even maintenance. Like sometimes the system that we have are trapped in a cycle of aid dependency. So utility reform changes the operational and financial performance so that they can eventually access commercial financing on their own terms. So this means that beyond the institution that we already have, the infrastructure, sorry, that we already have through the different utilities, we have to work harder to have better institutions so that we can as well like have benefits from the financial performances from those institutions. And the policy and regulation is actually very important because investors need stability. Investment everywhere, we need like stability, we need clear laws, we need concrete and predictable enforcement to create a safe environment for people to invest in whatever we have. So that's why it's important to have a good institution behind that. And it's also very important to work on the capacity building. This is one of the things that matters the most, especially for young people like us. Water Forward commits to training water sector professionals, for example, engineers and leaders to reach the economic flow. And this is like a pipeline for different careers, for expertise of opportunities that does not exist at this scale right now. So it's important to invest in institutions that can foster, the capacity building for different people involved and for the youth as well. So yeah, the lesson learned from decades of water investment failures, it's very simple. We can fund infrastructures, but we cannot buy institutions. So they have to be built. And this actually takes us back to the level 3 that we mentioned earlier about the different level of the water forward implementation. So we need both. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this actually takes us back to the level 4 that we saw earlier about the different implementation phases of the water forward. So this was where I was talking about the importance to hold our decision makers accountable on the ground as well from their commitment during the water compact. So at the global level, platforms convene, like we've convened together during the launching of the initiative. We've shared knowledge, we've shared compacts, we've shared tools across countries. But now it's important when we go back to the country level to have platforms that coordinate national implementation of the different water compacts to align donor support behind government priorities, and also to recognize and work with youth voices, the stakeholders from the private sectors to make sure that we are actually implementing all these commitments. And this is where the global commitment becomes local action. And it's very important to have that as well. And yeah, here are the different countries I was talking about earlier, like Kenya, Senegal, Jamaica, Sierra Leone, Angola, Uzbekistan. There were more countries beside the African countries here. Like there were more countries that had commitment during the Water Compact. So I think there is a link in the chat that you can use to go read more about those different countries if you are interested in any of them. But yeah, those are the different investment, the different compacts that were made. Okay, so what we can do now, you might be asking, like, how can a person Lambda in the community be involved in the water forward initiative? So first of all, like, I think there's a link in the chat to read all the water compacts. It's on the World Bank's group. I think it's worldbank.org/water. The link is in the chat. You can find your specific country's compact and understand what your government is committed to. So that is a document that can be used as an accountability tool. So be sure to read it through and to use it. The second one is to engage governance. So engaging governance means participating in public consultations and country water forums. Water governance needs citizen voices, right? We need more involvement, we need more voices, more representation. So wherever you are already positioned to do this. If you're on this call, you already have the means and you are positioned to actually do that and to engage in that governance discourse. Now, the third idea is to drive innovation. And we are talking about like innovative ways of thinking of or even addressing issues in communities. Today, we have things like climate smart water solutions, digital monitoring tools, community service models. So there are different things that I feel like we as the youth, we can we can fill in, like we can bring our expertise on, especially in innovation, like driving innovative ideas. And after that, we have like the movement. It's important to build community, to build movement. We come together, we connect together, and the Water Forward platform like the Water Forward platform calls for youth engagement in shaping policy, building capacity, and driving SDG6 accountability. So this is not the time where we should be working on silo. I think that we should build a movement where we come all together to address those issues. The fifth one is unlock opportunity. So Water Compact implementation creates careers, entrepreneurship opportunities, and financing pipelines. Here we have a growing number of projects that need skilled young water professionals. So this is actually another way to get involved in that field. And the sixth point here is amplifying the agenda. So just share and talk about the initiative within your communities and your network, whether it is on social media or even in person. The goal here is just to make water visible, like a visible priority in your community and online. And that's it for me. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you so much. That's a great presentation. I'd like to welcome any urgent questions, any point of clarification. She will be in the panel, the session that we have next. So if it's a general question, you can ask then, but you can still ask right now. Or comments, it doesn't need to be a question. Okay. If there are none, we would like to go to the next section, which is delving into the Kenya Water Compact. It's a 35-page document, but we thought it ideal to have a short video, to share a short video so that we can understand what it's about before we go into the panel. Okay. Please confirm.
Back to the explainer. Today, we are setting our sights on a topic that's, well, literally the lifeblood of our future. We're breaking down the Kenya Water Compact 2026. This is a monumental roadmap that was just released, and let me tell you, it's geared up to completely redefine agriculture, water access, and the national job market. It's not just some minor policy update. We're talking about a massive strategic shift in resource management with some really huge economic stakes. So if you're looking to understand how this bold, forward-looking approach is going to tackle climate and resource challenges over the next few years, you are in exactly the right place. Okay, let's dive into this. Before we get into the really granular details of the strategy, we kind of have to step back, look at the big picture, and ask ourselves what actually lies ahead for Kenya's water landscape. Honestly, the answer is a complete transformation. You know that water isn't just a basic resource, right? It's the absolute foundation of agriculture, public health, energy production, and economic growth. What's coming is an incredibly aggressive push toward universal access, paired with this super ambitious plan to literally double the amount of irrigated land. It's all about ensuring absolute food and economic security. When a nation drafts a roadmap of this magnitude, it's essentially laying out a survival and prosperity blueprint for dealing with changing global climates. And that brings us right to the core framework we're analyzing today. Section 1. Introducing Water Forward. Kenya's new strategic framework doesn't rely on a single isolated goal. Instead, this entire strategy is built upon a really sturdy foundation of two massive interconnected pillars that will completely overhaul the nation's infrastructure from the ground up. Look at that sweeping, dynamic wave of blue rushing upward, splashing energetically against the white space. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer momentum and energy behind the first core pillar, the Kenya Wash Compact. It's definitely not a stagnant pool. It's a surging wave of progress. Now, WASH, as you probably know, stands for Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene, and this initiative aims to create a sweeping wave of universal access across the entire country. We're talking about fundamentally transforming the daily reality for millions of people. This pillar is all about guaranteeing that clean, safe water and proper sanitation are no longer viewed as luxuries. They need to be the absolute fundamental baselines for every single community. It visually communicates a refreshing surge of new policy aimed at dramatically improving public health, keeping kids in school, and empowering local economies by lifting that massive burden of water scarcity. Now, what's really fascinating here is the primary text anchored right alongside that wave. It reads, "Water forward." Let that sink in for just a second. It's an active command, and it perfectly introduces our second core pillar, the Kenya Irrigation and Water Security Compact. The days of reactive defensive water management are officially over. Forward means aggressive agricultural expansion. Specifically, this compact outlines the massive, and I mean massive, goal of doubling the nation's irrigated land. We're moving far away from a risky reliance on rain-fed agriculture and pivoting straight toward highly resilient, climate-smart farming. So this isn't just about saving water, it's about strategically utilizing every single drop to secure the nation's food supply, dramatically increase crop yields, and drive some truly unprecedented agricultural innovation. And building right beneath that bold declaration, we have the official designation, Kenya Water Compact. That word, compact, is incredibly important. It implies a formal agreement, right? A binding commitment, a unified front. But who is this compact actually for? Well, this is where the data gets incredibly exciting, especially for the younger generation. Get this, the compact explicitly commits to making women and youth 40% of all irrigation beneficiaries. 40%. Plus, this ambitious expansion is projected to create over 500,000 new jobs. And no, we aren't just talking about manual labor here. This policy is geared toward creating high-tech, modern roles. Think digital advisory, advanced irrigation scheme management, and cutting-edge agricultural technology. It's a unified pledge to secure the nation's water future while simultaneously sparking a massive youth-driven economic revolution. So the absolutely crucial takeaway is this. The Kenya Water Compact 2026 is officially signed, and these monumental goals are locked in. We're looking at a future defined by universal water access, a literal doubling of irrigated land, and the creation of 500,000 jobs squarely aimed at empowering youth and women. We've got the blueprint, we have the intent, and we definitely have the momentum. But, with unpredictable climate challenges constantly looming on the horizon, the real question is the infrastructure truly ready to catch this wave? And more importantly, are you ready to take advantage of the massive opportunities it's going to bring? Keep questioning, keep learning, and start preparing for the future of water. Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are setting our sights on a topic that's,
Hope we've learned a few things from that short video. And with that, I'd like to welcome Roy to take us to the next section. Thank you. Roy, you're not audible. I'm not sure if it's just from my end.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Thank you.
Sorry about that. My name is Roy Otieno, Events Coordinator at Kenya Youth Parliament of Water, and thank you all for joining this section. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I know we have talked across this forum about what the water crisis looks like, what we have seen, the data, we have had the commitments, we have also signed the compacts, but this session asks a different question, not just what needs change, but who makes the change and how does the change happen. So this session is called From Compact to Implementation. Kindly, if you would allow me to share the screen. And I want to sit with that word from for just a moment, because the distance between the signed commitment and a functioning water system is not measured in kilometers. It's measured in political will, in institutional trust, and in whether young people are genuinely resourced to lead, or simply this is just photographed at the room and sent at home. So this is what we are here to examine today. I will kindly request if I will have permission to share the screen.
Beatrice, are you in a position to do so?
Hi, Jerry.
Thank you.
Yes, I have allowed the access.
Okay, just a moment. Okay, I'm not sure if you can all see my screen.
Yes.
But yeah, this session, as I said, is from compact to implementation. And I would like if we all sit with the word from. So allow me to head over to the main agenda of the meeting, which we will be looking into 3 sessions, which the first will be in youth in governance and policies. The second one in advocacy and accountability, and then the practical engagement and pathways. So we have 4 panelists in this session, and I will start with introduction of Victoria Adwet, who is a youth and water climate governance advocate and the founder of Kisumu Youth and Wash Parliament, an institution she did not wait for someone else to build. So she works with the intersection of wash policy, Lake Victoria restoration, and civic accountability in East Africa. Victoria brings us the organizing perspective of what it looks like when young people stop asking for inclusion and start creating the structures and governance themselves. Our second panelist, who will be Richard Muraya, is the executive director of the Demography Project. And Richard works where population data meets policy. He understands not only who just lives in place, but what means for water access and service delivery. He brings the analytical lens, the numbers that should be driving our commitments, and the accountability question of why and so often, and why don't these systems work. Our third panelist of the day will be Judith Mwangi, who is a Kenyan water engineer and master's candidate driving SDG 6 progress across Central and East Africa. She is an award-winning advocate, SDSN Fellow, Women Champion, KTIL Award, and AU-EU Young Engineer Leaders Ambassador. Her work sits at the heart of water justice for women, children, and communities that have waited too long. And our last panelist of the day will be 𝗪𝒃 𝗪𝒃, who is a civil and environmental engineer with a specialization in integrated urban water resource management and wash knowledge broking. Currently an AU scholar pursuing a master's in water engineering. 𝗪𝒂𝒕𝒄 represents a generation of technical professionals who understand that engineering is not just about infrastructure, it's about systems and the people those systems are built to serve. So kindly allow me to call in the panelists to introduce themselves, just a brief 30-second introduction, beginning with Victoria Adwet.
Thank you so much, Roy. Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria Adwet, just as Roy has stated, and I'm the founder of the Kisumu Youth Wash Parliament. This is a youth organization that deals with capacity building young people so that they can meaningfully engage in matters water, sanitation, and hygiene. One of our key achievements as Kisumu Youth Wash Parliament is that we've come up with a digital repository that contains wash policies, frameworks, reports, and also we've come up with a report on integrated water resource management at the subnational level, just as an overview of what we have done. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Head over to Richard.
Yes, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Richard Muraya, as you've heard, the Executive Director of the Demography Project. We've been working in this space for the last 7 years, and our key initiative aligned towards water is called MAI, or Kikuyu for My Water. So basically what we're doing is enhancing awareness between rights holders and duty bearers regarding freshwater resource management. I'll be able to share with you during the panel session exactly what we've been doing and how this contributes towards strengthening water rights for Kenyans as well as Africans in general within our continent. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Over to you, Judith. Hi,
Morning
Judith.
once again. So I hope I'm clear enough. Unfortunately, I'm at the site and there are some noises at the background.
You're clear.
Okay, so my name is Judith Mwangi. I am the vice president. I am the vice president of KYPW, and it's such a pleasure to be part of the panel and so that I'm able to share what I've encoded out here as a water advocate and firstly, I would want to appreciate Panashe for attending. He's part of the Zimbabwe Youth Parliament for Water, and it's such a pleasure to see you here. I have done several collaborations with UNESCO, UNICEF, and in all these areas, I've been able to observe what is really lacking, and I hope to have a fruitful discussion on these matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. And now lastly to 𝗪𝒂𝒕𝒄.
Hello. I'm audible enough?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. I'm 𝒂𝒕𝒄 𝗪𝒂𝒕𝒄, civil and environmental engineer, as Roy has introduced me. I'm glad to be part of this conversation. Currently, I'm a master's student at Pan-African University, and previously, before coming to study my master's, I managed to work with various infrastructural agencies in Kenya, and the latest role was I work now as a utility expert, as an revenue water engineer at Homa Bay Water and Sanitation Company. So yeah, I'm also glad to be here and looking forward to a meaningful discussion. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, 𝗪𝒂𝒕𝒄, and thank you all for taking the time to join us for this wonderful session. So I'll begin. As you've all heard, we have 4 voices, 4 disciplines, but one question: how do we close the gap between the promise and the reality? So I want to organize our conversation around 3 pillars, and I will move between us deliberately. The first is youth in governance and policy, how young people collaborate with, challenge, and ultimately reshape institutions that were not designed with them in mind. The second is on advocacy and accountability, and this focuses on how we ensure that the commitments we make in rooms like this one are tracked, pressured, and most importantly, fulfilled. The third practical engagement pathway would, the third is a practical engagement pathway because it's an inspiration without access to cruelty. And what is real, what is concrete that a young person in East Africa and Africa can walk through today that can enable him to become a decision maker in the water sector. So as we move through this, I want the questions to stay with us. With one, are youth in the room or are youth off the room? Now, consultation is not governance. And the second question is, who is watching the watchers? Because advocacy without feedback mechanism is just noise. I'm sorry about that. And lastly, what does the first step look like? Maybe not in a framework, but in a life. So let us begin. I would first likely want to introduce the discussions as I have. So our key topics of the day are going to be based on these three topics or key of discussions, which would include the formal roles, the WASH Parliament model, and the data evidence. So coming into the pillar of governance and policy, I would want to introduce Victoria. So this is a question to you, Victoria. You did not wait for institutions to include youth and young people in water governance. You built your own. So the Kisumu Youth WASH Parliament is a model that others are watching. So tell us in your own words, what made it necessary for you to build this? What were the existing institutions failing to do? And what has it taken to structure the Kisumu Youth WASH Parliament as your own?
Thank you so much, Roy. And great question. Let me start by saying that as Victoria Duet, my background has got nothing to do with water sanitation and hygiene. And people find this very intriguing because the milestones we have achieved as an institution, if you look at it, even the members of Kisumu Youth WASH Parliament are not WASH professionals. Yes, we have 1, 2, 3, but a better percentage are not WASH professionals. So how did we get to where we are today? My background in communication, at some point I was exposed to what the numbers that we see actually mean in the community. When Danielle was doing her presentation, there was 4 billion. It is very different now when you go to the ground, when you go to the communities and you actually see what these numbers actually mean. You get to witness firsthand young girls and women walking miles and miles to access water. You get to see firsthand what lack of proper structures, lack of proper governance, what really means when now we come to the communities and you see those who are actually affected in these communities, and you ask yourself, don't we have existing systems that should sort out some of these problems? Now, with that background, that's how KYWP came into being, because I am still a young person in the community, and I looked at some of these challenges that were so, it is something you would see on a day to day, the same problem over and over again, and you wonder, isn't somebody else seeing this, or where is the weak link? So I brought together a couple of young people still within the same locality, and we were like, you know what? Something needs to be done, and we can spearhead the change that we want to see. And so we started by formalizing, because you cannot engage any institution out there before formalizing. So we formalized the organization by registering it so that we can have a strong voice when we were advocating for some of the issues we were seeing in the community. Once we formalized, then we went beyond just doing advocacy by making noise online. We used systems, we used existing structures. A good example is we went out and collected data on the status of integrated water resource management for the case of Kisumu County. You find that at a national level, Kenya does report on IWRM on SDG 6, but you find at the subnational level, because we are a grassroots organization and we believe that change should start from the bottom going up. So sorting out issues, wash issues at the locality, at the community level, can then be cascaded higher and higher to bring about the change that we want to see. So that was our starting point when we went out, and we leveraged on the fact that we have the numbers as young people. So we reached out to these young people. Number one, we went ahead to break down complex policies, complex frameworks in a manner that young people are able to relate with. When we are talking about access to water, when we are talking about participating in the CIDPs, we put it in such a way that young people, because naturally people believe that the water sector probably is for old people who have the institutional knowledge and all that. But the fact that we were so active in this sector, it has even made romanticized the whole water system, so that other young people are able to see that this is not something for the elderly. It is an area that they can contribute meaningfully. And also the fact that nobody is going to bring the seat and tell them, you know what, sit down. We pursued, we charted our own path when it comes to engaging the local government. We knocked those doors. We used systems to change the system, whereby yes, the national government was reporting at national level, but then we cascaded, we brought it down to the local level, and we went out and we engaged the young people to collect this data, and we sat down and we harmonized this data to communicate in a certain way, because when we are talking about evidence-based decision making, we do not want to rely on hearsay. So by the time we are going for systems to be changed, we have data, we have evidence that can back up what we are talking about. And that really gave a lot of prominence to what we were doing, because we had evidence to what we were calling for, the change we were calling for. Secondly, we are leveraging on the fact that young people are actually big on the digital space and innovation. So we also came up with a digital repository, because it's a challenge we experienced when now we wanted to access some of this information, and you find data is so fragmented. Data that some does not exist. That's why we even came up with the one that we did. So we felt like, to enable the young people to engage meaningfully, then there needs to be one umbrella platform that they can access all this information, so that even as they're engaging, they are well informed as to which document talks about what. If now we are talking about the Kenya Water Compact, we break down such frameworks into a level where young people are able to easily relate and understand and know where they can come in to change the system. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria, for that wonderful explanation. I would want to invite Richard, as I know you've worked with demographic data on a day-to-day basis. So based on what Victoria just described, you are able to see who's being left out and why. Maybe in just your own words, in the shortest time possible, under 30 seconds, what do you see in the numbers that either confirm or challenge the picture that Victoria has just described?
Yes, thank you very much, Roy. Victoria has brought up a very critical perspective on how youth can actually sit at the table where decisions are being made. Like I mentioned earlier, the youth are not, I wouldn't say decision makers per se. I would want to say right holders. Because when you look at fresh water as a resource by itself, they're key decision makers or people who have this obligation of ensuring that this right is perpetuated to all Kenyans, as it were in Kenya's case. Now, for Victoria's case, it's very interesting because we are looking at urban and peri-urban areas in Kenya, which are recording the highest population growth. We're looking at a situation by 2050 that Lake Victoria North and South will have possibly along the lines of a quarter of Kenya's population. So the children that are being born right now, who will be youth in 2050, are the ones who are going to witness the worst of the worst in terms of freshwater availability, not just the repercussions of climate change. We're talking about the projected available freshwater availability. So essentially, it's very important for us to look at it in terms of who exactly will suffer most at this. And of course, it's going to be women and children, and you have to cluster also our youth as part of this. Most of our urban population currently and also in the forthcoming future are all going to be youth, and it's critical that youth not just sit at the table but also look forward, that there's someone who's going to be a youth 10, 15, 20 years from now, and we also need to factor in their needs as we plan for freshwater resource management situations right now and also for the future. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both for your wonderful insights. Because of the interest in time, I won't indulge all panelists on specific questions, but allow me to move into the second pillar. But from what I'm hearing is that the structures do exist, but now the connective tissue between them and the institutional action is still fragile, which I think now brings us to our second pillar, because the structures without accountability are just architecture. So we should know who actually holds the line to help us move forward. And on this, I would want to introduce advocacy and accountability, where I will be bringing Richard in again. Sorry if it seems that I am pointing a finger on you, but I believe that you will be the one who will maybe help us understand why. So a question to you, Richard. So data is either a tool or an accountability tool for delay. In your experience, which one is it between the two? A tool for accountability or a tool for delay? And what will you have to change for demographic evidence to actually move a budget, a policy, or a procurement outcome?
Yes, thank you very much, Roy. First, for the question, I feel like this would be a tool for accountability. It's important for us to understand that when you look at public finance broadly, we all contribute to the national cake in one way or another. Taxes are process of life. So when you look at how service delivery is provided, not just by government and other service providers, including water service providers, we are looking at how citizens can get value of their money and also have their rights and freedom still protected within the context of the Kenyan Constitution. So when we look at demographic data per se, it's supposed to inform policy. Again, now an answer to the second question. The reason is we need to make, like I mentioned, the number of people in Kenya are not just numbers. We're looking at individual lives, and we are also part of this process called life. So most of us will be parents or currently will be parents, and 10, 20 years from now, our children will also be parents, and we all pretty much part of not just the political economy, but also the social fabric of the country. So we need to be cognizant that whatever we do right now within the context of advocating for freshwater rights, it needs to apply across board. So at 20 years from now, either our forebearers will get similar or enhanced rights when it comes to freshwater resources. Now, that said, Kenya is a very interesting case. Kenya is just one of two countries globally where both the country name as well as the name of the capital city are linked to water. So Kenya is not just Kenya, it's Kenya. So Kenya means snow, referring to fresh water, the snow on Mount Kenya. And Nairobi, of course, means place of cool waters. And when you look at most of the urban areas in Kenya, one way or another, they link back to water. The town Ruiru, Kisumu, I am 100% sure, Nakuru, Naivasha, all these towns and urban areas. I'm sorry for the background noise. All these towns and cities are linked directly to water. And the interesting thing is that most of these towns and cities are all water scarce. That is the interesting thing that cuts across board in Kenya. Last year, Kenya passed a very alarming mark in that our freshwater availability per capita, per person, crossed below 500 cubic meters per person per year. 500 cubic meters sounds like a lot, but 500 cubic meters is around 500,000 liters per year. And that includes the water that you get from farming, the water you get from all affiliated industrial activities linked to water. You have your own personal consumption of water, as well as all activities pertaining to water for you in a year. We crossed the threshold where the UN classifies Kenya as water scarce. We are currently at 235 cubic meters per year. And with a rise in our population, we are currently at, I'd say, 65 million Kenyans. By 2050, we should be at about 100 million. So considering that we are talking about the same freshwater resources, we are not adding any more freshwater. In as much as we have El Nino episodes here and there, we still are not going to have more freshwater than what we currently have currently. So in the next 24 years or so, a city like Nairobi within Athi River Basin will have lower than 100 cubic meters per person per year. This means that most of the water that you currently have, that you can currently find in your tap, will not be available as frequently and the same intensity. And unfortunately, this is a situation that will not improve over the next coming years. So how exactly are we working towards enhancing freshwater stewardship as well as conservation with context to people per se? Let's not look at ecosystems first. Let's look at people. Are we responsible, or are we showing stewardship for the freshwater we have? So these are some of the questions that make it bleak. The situation will not improve. That is the truth of the matter. And like I mentioned, like at the river basin, we are talking about water availability that will be lower than currently is in northeastern region broadly. I hope you understand what that means. We might not have the abundance, even in leafy suburbs, as we call them, we may not have the abundance of fresh water as we currently enjoy today. So in the next 24 years, what do we want to see? Do we want to see a city which is starved of water? And we're not just talking about Nairobi, we're talking about Mombasa City, Konza City, Thika City, Kikuyu municipality, amongst all these other, and this is just in at the river basin. Add the rift, add Tana River Basin, Lake Victoria North, South. All these basins will have critical challenges with regards to water availability. So essentially, can we be able to have data, not just speaking at a national level, but having it go down to as low as a village level? Can we be able to estimate your own domestic water usage in a day or in a month? Can you be able to reduce, see how you can be able to reduce or mitigate unnecessary water consumption or wastage at a domestic level? So all these issues, again, they point back to people. And when you talk about such issues, this is more of a behavioral issue. Can we be able to inspire this kind of confidence, inspire action at a local level? As Victoria rightfully said, we can only achieve so much as an individual. We need to have it as a collective intervention to make sure that not only our duty bearers, our elected representatives play a role with regards to policy making, but also ourselves. Let us look at existing data, make it make sense for yourself at an individual level so that you can understand just how much we play a role with regards to freshwater stewardship. So how do we go about it? I will not add to what I'll not repeat what Victoria mentioned about participating in CIDP processes, but I'll look at how you play a role with regards to decision making within the freshwater sector. Every 3 years thereabout, every water service provider or water utility company has its license renewed through a public participation process, as well as the billing process, where the tariffs which you pay your water bill. All this is done in a consultative process, which involves public participation at a local level. I've been attending a number of them for almost 80 of the 102 water service providers in the country for the last 7 years. And I'll be honest with you, youth do not participate in this process completely. And it's such a tragedy because when you're looking at housing, for example, you are looking for an apartment or so, many people just ask, mnalipisha aje per unit? How much do you charge per cubic meter of water? Because most apartments have their water piped in. So you'll find that it's usually a rough figure that landlords or caretakers offer. But when you go deep into the data and you understand just how expensive water gets across the country, it will surprise you. You'd be interested to know that a county like Kericho, which receives water from the Kericho Water and Sanitation Company, I believe has the second or the highest water tariff within the country. This goes, as I believe, as high as 180 shillings per cubic meter of water. And that is a very high amount if you compare it with a city like Nairobi City, whose per cubic meter cost comes to just about 108 shillings per cubic meter. And this, remember, this is at a personal level or at a domestic level. Now, when you scale it up,
sorry to cut you short, but because of the interest of time, will you kindly wrap up within the next 30 seconds so that we can head on to the third pillar?
Okay. So like I mentioned, most of these public participation forums require a lot of evidence or data to show just how the cost or availability of water affects quality of life as well as the cost of living, because this is a current issue that you're facing, not just in the country, but globally. So essentially, youth need to, we the youth need to participate actively by not just participating in these forums, but also having that residual feedback, engaging with all water service providers, all the way from the ministerial level down to your water service provider. That way you have a mechanism of ensuring accountability, not just with regards to public finance, but also on the service, the quality of service delivery by all water service actors within the water service sector. So broadly, we have a lot to play and a lot to discuss, perhaps, but I'll leave it at that point. Encourage you tomorrow, get a copy of your MyGov Kenya. Just peruse through and see what the Water Service Regulatory Board will be posting with regards to tariffs or policy formulation process, and make sure you also put in your voice within it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Your data tells us the story of where we are, where we headed, and where we need to be. Honestly, I was listening into everything that you've said, and if it were not up to the time, I think we would have given you much more time to dwell and dive into the advocacy, because you are bringing in literally what the challenges that you're facing as youth and even in the water sector. So to quickly wrap it up, I'll move into the third transition. Currently, we've already talked about structures. We have talked about accountability, and now want to get practical, because every person in this room who cares about water justice has at some point asked, where do we actually start? And I would love to welcome Judith. And
sorry for interrupting. Do we have any questions for Danielle? She has to go to another meeting very soon. So if there's any question for her, please.
Any questions for Danielle? I think I'll ask you a question that I had in mind. So Danielle, you've built African Youth Parliament of Water across 24 countries. So what does it actually take to get youth from being an afterthought in water conversations to being a real part of decisions being made? I think that's my question for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sorry that I have to drop off earlier. But yes, to respond to that question, I think I will respond to it in three different parts. So the first one is evidence, right? We are talking about how to move from youth, being involved to like an actual decision maker, active, to have this active sit at the table. So first, I think the first step is the evidence. We as young people, we cannot demand a seat at the table with passion alone. Like passion, unfortunately, is not enough. You need the means, you need the tools, you need data, you need community level data that institutions do not have and cannot generate from the outside. So if I take the case of the African Youth Parliament for Water, we actually bring that, right? We bring the experience, we bring the perspective, we bring the youth voices, the database that this organization cannot generate from the outside. So that's how they can see value in partnering with young people and make them active decision maker, and even include them in different processes. So when the African Youth Parliament for Water, for example, goes into a ministry or even a World Bank meeting, like what happened on May 15, we do not just say young people matter. That's too easy, that's too light. We show that young people are already doing the work on the ground, and we have concrete example, whether it is in Zambia through the Pad a Girl campaigns, or even in Togo through the eco jogging, or even in Kenya with the work that the chapter is doing. We make the institutional cost of ignoring that, like we showcase this work, and we make the institutional cost of ignoring that visible. So this is why I think that you need to document, you need to show the evidence of the work that you do. And this will actually contribute to change the conversation from invitation to actual necessity. The second one is structure. Youth participation fails when it is individual and informal. That's why I said earlier that it's important not to work in silos, but to work together. So, for example, one young person in a room full of decision makers is a token. If we go alone in these rooms, we are acting as token, and we are actually expanding the tokenistic way of like how things work sometimes in those institutional rooms. So as for a continental organization with governance frameworks, reporting systems, and chapters across 24 countries like the parliament, we are designed from the beginning to be structurally impossible to dismiss, because we are not loud, but because we are very organized, and we do not work as like individuals, as like we do not work in silos, we work together. So third but not least, and this is like the honest one for me, I think persistence is very important. You need to be persistent without any permission. So nobody handed the African Youth Parliament for Water at a seat. Like there was no seat handed to us, right? So we had to work to persist, whether it is the water forward or even different opportunities at the community level, at the United Nations level, at other organizational levels, even the African Union. It's just a matter of of persistence. So we have to understand that here we are building relationships. We made ourselves indispensable over time. And eventually, um, we are not invited in this room as courtesy. We are invited them because we are seen as delivery partner within the platform architecture. Because why? Because we had the evidence, we have the structure, and we are persistent. So for me to resume everything and respond to that question, the shift from afterthought to decision maker is like not a moment, it is like a real strategy behind it, and it requires youth organizations, ourselves, the parliament, to stop asking to be included and start building the infrastructure that makes exclusion impossible. Earlier during the presentation, I'd mentioned that we cannot have architecture without institution. So the parliament, the youth voices are the institutions needed to make the architecture, which is the work that we are doing, doable and sustainable. So yeah, that's what I will say for that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle, for your insight and for answering the question. I think we will allow you to leave at will for your next meeting. And without further ado, I will continue with the third pillar, where we will engage in now the practical pathways. So here I will invite Judith, and before doing that, we had talked about structures in our first pillar. Second pillar talked on accountability, but now we want to get more practical. And many of us have these questions, wondering where do we actually start. So over to you, Judith. You hold fellowship awards and ambassadorships across multiple international platforms. But what I want to ask you about the beginning of that journey is, what was the door that opened first? And more importantly, is that door still open for young women who are earlier in their careers?
Thank you, Roy. Thank you very much. Thank you to the previous panelists. You have provided really precise answers, which have been so impactful to me in what I'm going to be speaking about. So I believe the first entry point to any situation, to any career, is always taking the first step. Is always the what do you want to be in the future? Then you have to have small steps that will lead you to that particular future. So I believe the first activities I did do was firstly attending webinars. And I thank everyone. Thank you to everyone who has been able to join us in this webinar. This is the first step. I believe for me, this is the first step to be able to advocate, because there are people. We are like-minded people who are who are free to share what we have encountered in the industries, what we have encountered out here, and be able to come and converse about it and find solutions to different problems. So I believe the first step is usually going to the webinars. And after that, I believe after getting enough knowledge, especially on water and matters concerning water, and you want to be an advocate for water and for water generally, is to join an organization, either as a member, as a volunteer. There is then from there on, you're able to have something concrete. You can be able to say that I am part of a group. They have some certain missions and visions. And I believe those visions are what I project in a future career and as an advocate too. So by joining, you can end up just being a normal member of the group. You can also take up leadership positions, and I believe everything that I have done until now has been majorly volunteer work. So this is really driven. This requires a lot of passion in order to be able to have engagement in these in these fields. You have to be engaged. You have to believe, and you have to have a lot of passion towards uh, these missions. So because as a volunteer, the first leadership positions I took were majorly you will be asked how many hours are you willing to work on, and then you will see those are so many hours for me to work on um maybe a webinar, you're planning a webinar, it takes a lot of time. So you might end up being discouraged. But I believe if you hold a similar vision, a similar mission, um, you end up having coming across people who are also interested to hear your voice, who are interested in listening to your perception and helping you to go further in your dream. For me, it was majorly on UNICEF because I have been able to engage some of the people in Kenya Parliament for water, and we had an article. We contributed to an article about young Bosch innovators. And thank you to everybody who participated in that. So from the outcomes of the article, we're able to hear youth voices loudly. We're able to have we can be able to say we have taken a step forward. But all this comes from giving your time, giving your energy towards a mission. These are all basically volunteer work until this starts yielding. So it requires a lot of passion. Is there anything else I've missed out? Right? I don't want to take a lot of time.
Okay. I think thank you for that. Because of also time, we would want to bridge to Clavin. Clavin, you are an African UA, an AU scholar working in a field which is integrated urban water management that sits at the intersection of government, engineering, and community. So in your experience, where do young technical professionals need to be, or where do these technical professionals are mostly needed, and where are they least found, especially in our East Africa water sector right now?
Thank you, Roy. First of all, thank you for the question, and thank you for the first previous presenters. I think they have built a very good basis on what needs to be done. So, from my perspective, from an engineer, water engineer perspective, having practiced in various agencies, currently the major gap and the major challenge the water sector in Kenya specifically is facing is majorly in non-revenue water. And I'm glad that the water compacts, Kenya Wash compacts highlight this very well, that non-revenue water still is the biggest menace we are facing currently as a sector. And that's where the problem is where the skills are needed. So for me, I think non-revenue water will be the biggest employer for youth within the sector in water supply. That's in water supply, and a lot of digital skills will be needed within that sector. And also moving to what the compact says, the second aspect of the compact, the irrigation aspect, they intend to build about 560 jobs. But majority of our young people are skeptical on issues farming. But if we are to look at the reality of the issue, is that if we intend to build 560 jobs and double the irrigatable land within the country, then our youth should position themselves majorly on non-revenue and also on irrigated agriculture. So that's where I'll say that we need to build a lot of skills around. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Clavin, for your insight. And now, thank you all, our four panelists, for your wonderful thoughts. I would want to have a bridging question to all of you, just a maximum of 1 minute each. So by ending this segment with something concrete, Judith, Clavin, you both work in implementation. Victoria has built something, organizing structures, and Richard has mapped population realities by including data in it. So if each of you had to design one pathway, just one, for a young person today, from that will enable him or her move from an engaged citizen to a genuine decision maker in the water sector, what does that pathway look like? What does exist? And how are we able to help them achieve their goals? So I think for this, I will start with Victoria.
Thank you so much, Roy. And that's quite a question for 30 seconds, but let me try. Based on what I have experienced on the ground with the Kisumu Youth Wash Parliament, I would say we don't need loud advocacy, but we need strategic positioning. Youth need to know how to strategically place themselves so that they can meaningfully engage. It is not being out there and being so loud. It is knowing that when I attend CIDPs, when I attend public participations, then I'm able to influence, in simple, using systems to change the systems that we want to see. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Over to you, Richard. If you are to design one pathway for a young person today to move from an engaged citizen to a genuine decision maker, what will that pathway look like?
I believe that it starts from being informed. Take a keen interest in everything happening around you, especially from your village. Please don't look down on your village chief. Don't look down on your village elders. They know a lot and they can help you unlock so many opportunities within this space. So have a keen ear for what is happening within your space. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Judith?
Pardon, sorry, I was held up.
Okay. I had
Just give it
asked
a
if
bit.
you
Yes.
okay, if you had to design one pathway, just one for a young person today to move from an engaged citizen to a decision maker in the water sector, what would that pathway look like?
I believe for me would be to put to either, because I believe everyone has a stronghold in what they're doing. It's just to see where can they fit in. So I believe we can start them through volunteer work, and then we can head towards policy, which many youth don't like, policy writing and policy enactments. And I believe we have with that we have a foundation of what our WASH advocates. Sorry, that doesn't really answer that question, but that's what I believe.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your opinion and thoughts. Over to Clavin for the last one before we close the floor.
Okay, thank you, Roy. Thank you, Roy. It's unfortunate that we don't have enough time to discuss the issues. But for me, really, it will be looking on both sides of the coin, both the side of the government and the citizen aspect. If it's the youth, you have to look at the government, because we cannot also rule out the fact that water is in the hands of the government. So both the government has a role to play, and also both levels of government have roles to play, and also the youth as a person has a role to play. And when it comes to the youth, if I was to design anything, it will be information, giving them the information they need to be able to be sensitive of what is happening around water in their communities, in their areas of speciality. For me, I call them languages of water. For example, you might be in a different field that is related to water, like health or energy, or so. Just tweaking that aspect and making them be sensitive that there are opportunities within the water sector that they can utilize to earn or to grow their careers is an important thing. And also making sure that those in government also are able to put the youth on the table. That's also that comes in from the youth aspect. As youths, we also need to push the government to do their job, and also to be able to leverage, like youths being able to negotiate what they need from the government. And I think this compact is a key starting point. We can put the government to task. From these 560 jobs, they said 40% of them should go to the youth and women. And at least we have something, a binding contract that they have already signed, that we can keep them to account and ensure every deal they make that youth and women are engaged in. Thank you. Hopefully we'll get another time so that we can share ideas well. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Clavin, Richard, Judith, and sorry, I'm forgetting one of you, Victoria, for the wonderful presentations that you've been able to give us. I would just want to give a floor contribution, but for this, I won't open it up. Rather, for the attendees, I would want you to just quickly input your thoughts on the chat. I'll share this question in the chat as well. So we have heard from the panel. I would want to hear from the room because the people in these chairs are also part of the implementation. So I would either want a commitment for something that you're going to do differently after this session, or a challenge or a barrier that you think that the panel has not yet named. So I have added that into the chat section, so feel free to answer to the attendees who are currently in session. So allow me to close the floor by thanking all the 4 presenters, panelists that we've had this evening. So we came into this session with a question embedded in one title, from a compact to implementation. And what we've had during the last 1 hour is just mapping the distance between these 2 words. And that distance, as it turns out, it's not technical, it's not political, it is structural, and in many cases, it is also intentional. So what this panel has made clear that you are not waiting, as young people are already building governance structures that institutions have failed to provide. This is not a small thing, it is a model, and it is data that without demand, it is just a document, where Richard has also pointed to us that numbers do exist. And the question is whether we should build the political will to act on them, or just allow them to sit on our desks, on our reports that we just cite and just shelve. So the technical aspect, where both Judith and Clavin have challenged a false separation that this sector makes too often, where there is a difference between the people who design the systems and the people who also fight for them as well. So as an engineer who can be able to translate a community's water reality into budget, policy, and a procurement decision, and that is what all our panelists have shown us, that it is power. So as we close things, I would want to first specifically give thank to all our panelists for the wonderful time and presentations that you've all had. This panel has given us the language, the evidence, and the courage to hold us up to standard. But now the question is whether we will do it. So thank you, Richard, Victoria, Judith, and Clavin, and to everyone in this room who has brought the voice into this conversation. Thank you, and over to you, Jerry.
Thank you so much. I'd like to invite Beatrice to close it for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry and Roy, for that beautiful moderation throughout the session. And I'd like to say also a big thank you to our panelists for the insightful conversation and unpacking on what the Kenya Water Compact 2026 has in store for us as young people, as we look towards identifying some of the opportunities that are there for us. As I continue in the last 5 minutes before we leave, I see we are dropping our participant numbers. I get it. Our time is a bit far ahead and gone. So just allow me to bring our rapporteur to be able to give us just a brief overview of what we've discussed and really looking at the way forward and the next steps as young people as we look ahead in terms of implementing this specific compact and looking at holding the government accountable towards ensuring that we as young people and even the women are also, given a chance and a support system towards giving them a voice to be able to implement this compact within their specific areas of expertise. So thank you so much. Stella, if you're here with us, I would like to bring you on board and just be able to give us a brief overview of what you have for us. It's sort of like a communique and see what you've been able to discuss as as a team and see what has in store for us as we move ahead. So Stella, you have 2 minutes to be able to give us your communique, and then you can go to wrap up after that.
Thank you so much, Beatrice, and also for every panelist, every speaker or moderation, and every participant who has stayed up to this time. I have learned a lot myself as someone who is in the water space. Again, not my profession, but as someone who is in water space, I've learned a lot. 1 minute will be enough. Today we have learned that structures exist, but without accountability, that is just drone architecture. So this means that we have to, one, individual action, which is important to enhance water stewardship. And when we talk about accountability, it speaks to public participations, as it has been very, very much said. Participate in forums, participate in CIDPs. For those who don't know, CIDPs is County Integrated Development Plans, and also like water service providers when they are billing, participate in these things, get to learn, get your voice heard. And that is one way the youth voices are put into consideration. We have also learned, and I want everyone to remember that water links to each other sector. Every other sector, if you're in energy, if you're in agriculture, water links to each and every sector, and most importantly, it holds economies together. So what is our call for action? Show up, get information. Again, you can never speak without information, and there is need for evidence. If you're going to knock on that door, if you want something done, if you want something changed, you have to back it with data. Evidence data helps in influencing policies. Engaging leaderships, that is rulers, join them. Again, we can never emphasize this enough. Align, not as an individual and not informally. Join a group, because this will give you opportunities for, one, financing, two, to collaborate with entities. We are talking about a water compact that is a government agenda that needs youths, right? Then you cannot go there as an individual or an informal setup. You have to be in a very formal setup so that you're able to collaborate with entities like government and private sector. This equally opens opportunities. Collective effort goes a long way. We have seen in the water compact, the Kenya Water Compact, I'll narrow down. There is job opportunities for experts, for innovators, for farmers. 40% is for youths and women. How can you then align to be one of the youths who is benefiting in an irrigation project? We always have climate resilient solutions. How do we align with the Water Compact agenda so that we're able to align? And capacity building, you heard about the capacity building for activists, experts. How then do we align to this? But again, we cannot work as silos. We have to be together because collective effort goes a long way. Thank you so much for everyone who stayed and every panelist again. Over to you, Wambui.
Thank you, Stella, for that brief presentation of what we've discussed. And a huge thank you to everyone else and our participants for really keeping in within our conversation today. And as we continue to reflect on what the Kenya Water Compact has in store for us, I think it would be good also for us to be able to remember that there's a huge disconnect between wash irrigation as well as the importance that integrated water resource management approach plays in terms of ensuring that we are able to have infrastructure and service delivery And while we look at how we are implementing this compact, I think it's even far for us to be able to bring that, to be able to preach that discount as young people and to continue engaging with this compact together, and not just as young people, but also let's connect this with governance and the finance opportunity that is already there for us, especially now looking at Kenya. What are some of the opportunities that has in store for us as we look towards implementing this compact? Otherwise, I think I want to be able to finish up and just to say thank you for everyone else who have been able to stay with us since the end of the call. And thank you very much also for the team from Kenya Youth Parliament for Water for being able to working together on this. It has not been an easy journey to be able to bring this conversation and to be able to see how can we better bring these difficult conversations in such platforms, and where young people can be able to bring their thoughts and their brains together to work towards a better system and a better sector for us as Kenyan. So thank you so much for this, and I look forward to more collaboration. And these are good examples of young people not working in silos, and I look forward to more and more engagement together. And we also, just to mention that we'll be able to share this recording with everyone else who has been in this call or listening in this call. We will share this information with you, the communique, as well as the webinar recording with you, in case you'd like to just be able to have a look at it at your free time, and let us know how best you can be able to bring this conversation on young people and water on a digital platform together. So as we share this information, please give us a feedback on how this webinar has been, and we're able to look forward to better engagement in the future. Thank you so much, and have a lovely week and a lovely day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.